Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Masami. Special thanks to you. I served in Tokyo. Those were very happy years. And I'm especially happy to be here today because iSpace Japan have their European headquarters in Luxembourg. So I could stop my speech here. But since you know less about Luxembourg than about Japan, I'm sure I'll have to speak a little bit longer. But if you get bored, please interrupt me. Of all the EU countries, we adopted the very first law on space resources, imitating what the US had done a few years before. We recognized, just like the US, that these resources can and should be used. To begin with, this was all about asteroid mining, which sounds like science fiction and still looks a bit like fiction. And it's developed since into space mining, but mining on the moon to serve future missions building on the resources of the moon, what we call in situ resource utilization. Why did Luxembourg, as a very small landlocked country, launch this idea? It's about our size, it's about our capital resources. We are always looking for new sectors to develop after steel, which more or less disappeared from Luxembourg, and banking. We know all about the risks of banking we've seen in the last few days. We are looking into new activities linked to our new university, like research. And space was evident. We have a different philosophy from big states, in that we always favored private enterprise. We started in 1929 by renting out our airwaves to a private company. Instead of having a government radio or television, we let RTL, with Belgian, French, Luxembourgish, later German capital, launch our media, our national media. And then this philosophy was followed again in space. Since 1985, we have a private company which really launched the space sector in Luxembourg and in the world. This is a very big corporation which has a stand at this conference too, which you can visit tomorrow. So we were always commercially and internationally minded. We lacked our own big players. We don't have a big domestic market. We don't have national champions. We don't have government monopolies. Instead, we welcome private companies. Today, we have in excess of, maybe we can go to the next slide, we have in excess of 80 space companies, thank you, and research labs, and about 1,400 people working in our space sector. The contribution to our GDP is 2%. We want to double it within the next 7 years. And this part of the GDP is one of the highest in Europe. And this only after 5 years of actively promoting this sector in Luxembourg. We only set up our space agency in 2018. We are a pioneer perhaps, but we are not some sort of a revolutionary. We joined ESA, and now we can go back to the first slide, to these, yeah, that one. We joined ESA in 2005 already. We were the 17th member. ESA is a European Space Agency. They are our principal or strategic partner. We're in daily contact, and I was told by our head of international affairs that 80% of our staff in Luxembourg devote like quarter of their time to European projects and working together with ESA. So we are very actively involved with ESA. You know how ESA works. We finance, and there's a domestic return. So, and together, we're very proud that we set up a European Space Resources Innovation Center, which is not yet on this graph, which came later, namely 2 years ago. SGx is a unique venture. It is about space resources and research at our university in partnership with the European Space Agency. But it was our idea, and ESA joined. And we are the only ones in Europe who have a research center like that. I will come back to that later on. But as I said, we are not a sort of revolutionary. We take part in UN efforts to codify space law through an international framework, which we are all working on. You know that there's this UN committee, the COP-UOS, which meets once a year in Vienna. And we actively contribute to developing international norms of behavior. And I will come back to that again later. But we're also very pragmatic. We are not waiting for norms to be codified and enshrined into law. To facilitate or speed up things, we look out for bilateral partnerships. And Artemis is one of them. We are very proud that we were one of the 7 founding members. We also signed MOUs, intergovernmental agreements, with the US separately, with Japan again, with Canada, Korea, Australia, and a dozen other countries. We also signed an agreement with NASA, between our authority and NASA. So coming now, devoting some time to what we really want to do. That's the next slide, please. Again, next. That one. Yeah. Our space resources strategy was published last year. So we formalized our ideas. This is more or less standard. I guess this is what every government would put onto paper if they were thinking about their strategy. But what I would like to stress here is that we put the emphasis on sustainability. It used to be one of our priorities, but it has recently become the official government guiding principle. There are 4 ways to implement the principle. We call that the 4 pillars of our space strategy. Let me start with the most important. First, the space sector should benefit Earth and the Earthlings, in keeping with the UN's development goals. We need to address social and environmental challenges as a priority. So we actively try and attract and promote corporations which are of benefit to Earth. Like I can quote again SES, who are with us today, who've developed a platform called Emergency LU. So if there's an earthquake somewhere like in Turkey, we send temporary base stations where they can link up again and using SAS geostationary capacities. I can quote Spire, who I am meeting today afternoon, who are also here. They follow weather data. Cleos, who are not here today, but who are also present in Washington, who do observation of signals on Earth to take care of hidden or illegal activity. And finally, Hydrosat. All these companies are in Luxembourg with their EU offices. Hydrosat delivers thermal data for agriculture. We also have a whole series of companies who have dual use. That's a word used in arms control, but this is dual use, space and Earth. Like we have a US company in Luxembourg called Astroport, who build landing strips. And these landing strips could be used on Earth too. They also make bricks from the moon's sand, which has applications potentially on Earth too. We have another company from Poland called 4 Points, who are planning on mining vehicles. Again, this is dual use. Another company called EMT Labs, who are discovering new heat and radiation shield material using artificial intelligence. And the last company, again from the US, again dual use, is called Lunar Outpost from Denver. They are working on air quality monitoring devices called Canary, like canary in a coal mine, to sustain their main space business. So there's a whole list of companies in Luxembourg amongst the ones that we showed you before, who are working to the benefit of Earth. Second pillar, sustainability in space itself. We like, of course, to avoid mistakes we made on Earth, and we like to aim on zero waste. This means responsible and sustainable use of outer space, better space traffic management. We need to avoid debris and prevent collisions. And again, there's 2 companies in Luxembourg already. North Star from Canada, one company, one from Switzerland called Clear Space, and one from Germany called Space Recycling. So all these companies are looking at avoiding space debris, avoiding collisions. And we don't reject companies, but we attract positively companies who work in these sectors. Third pillar of our sustainability campaign, we, of course, prioritize exploration of resources. But we do that through developing new ideas and technologies. Our main tool is SGx, which I mentioned before. As I said, it was our idea, and the ESA is helping us. There's 30 researchers which will work in that institute by next year. Many larger states would not focus first on space resources. It was more about discovering space, developing space knowledge. We focus on space resources. Lastly, a horizontal pillar, and I'm coming to the end, but please tell me, a horizontal fourth pillar, which is about creating a complete ecosystem which allows for economic sustainability, not green sustainability, but economic sustainability. We need strong corporations and a strong ecosystem. So we have like ESA's programs. We pay in 127 million, like $130 million for over the next 4 years. We have our domestic research programs, which are an equivalent amount, which is called Lux Impulse. And these budgets went up by 21% for this year. There's also venture capital firms in Luxembourg. There's a fund called the Future Fund, which the government set up in cooperation with the European Investment Bank. And there is again an American fund, Orbital Venture Fund, which is an idea of a guy who lives in Chicago. And he set up this fund as a private-public partnership to invest in deep tech, in startups in the space sector. And this is not another pillar, but we mention ethics, practical ethics. So we want to develop through academia, experts, workshops and conferences. Beyond the mere legal framework, we want to reflect on what should be done and what to avoid. Like we are also wondering about whether the mega constellations in lower Earth orbit are good value for money, given the associated risks. Is big data, including space data and its monetization, a threat to liberties? Is extraction of resources permissible only if there is a solid international legal framework, or can we go ahead, or can we forge ahead, and how to protect the public interest from a safety, security, debris, environmental perspective? How do we share resources? How do we tax these resources? How do we allow for newcomers, avoiding new monopolies in space? So we call this applied ethics, and we are really thinking of pushing this at our university. Our university already has 2 master's degrees in space, and we want to develop this aspect. I won't speak much longer, except I had some point for the younger audience here. So this SGx, which I mentioned, which is this unique European Luxembourgish research program, has a space startup support program. It is the first worldwide incubation program for startups in the space sector. So all startups, including from America, are welcome to apply. There is like $200,000, which is not much, fund, but we work with these startups to develop business plans afterwards. We have 5 candidates every year. 1 gets selected. Last year was the first one. A Polish startup made it. And this year, there's 5 candidates again, 1 from Czech Republic, 1 from the US, 1 from Canada, and again 1 from Poland. So please, any of you who are on the creative side, don't hesitate to contact us. We also have, I was just looking at what's happening in Luxembourg in April. We have a space hack, a 3-day hybrid hackathon for 5 teams of 12. So those who prefer to do a hackathon, they're also welcome in Luxembourg. Don't hesitate to contact me, and thank you very much.